association, but I'd like to focus on a couple things before, and not speak very long. Yesterday, the lead editorial in the Herald Tribune was, "It's time to think about traffic."
It's time and a half.
How many people here came by buses today?
I was going to ask the question, how many have ever taken a bus in Sarasota County? Ah, surprising number, okay. But I think that headline, for me, typifies what some of our major problems are here. And that is, and it has to do with our government and our planning. It was time to think about traffic a long time ago. It is not time to think about traffic after the fact, because we're in a, how do we get out of this mess that we've allowed to happen? The same thing applies to the UTC. How did it happen? That had to go through comp plan amendments. It had to go through zoning procedures. It had to get the full eye of the county commissioners upon it and their best thinking to give us what we got. So my complaint, or my thing about what we need to do if we're going to get to where John's talking about, we've got to get a government, including staff, not just the 5 that sit up there day in, day out, but we've got to get a handle on the decision making that doesn't get us to these points of no return. Well, okay, we're going to get out of the UTC mess with $120 million or whatever, of road improvements, diverging diamonds, overpasses, you name it. Now, 2 of our Kona neighborhoods are very concerned about the overpass that's being proposed, because it's going to send devastating traffic through their neighborhoods. How many of you have had to confront in your neighborhood or condo or whatever, let's call it a threat from something that you consider incompatible coming into your neighborhood or your area? What did you do about it? Did you go to the county commission and express your concern? And what was the result?
Nothing.
There we are. So and I'm not trying to dump on the county commission as such. I'm saying that this is the
John was on the commission with UTC, so he can answer that.
It's all his fault. But we're at a point where it appears that our comp plan, with all the yellow and green and purple and orange blobs all over the place, to a very sophisticated, savvy person, can wade through those 1,300 pages of the comp plan and the future land use maps and put it all together and understand when you are considering buying property and you want to know what's going to happen around you. So you go through all of that, your own due diligence, but unless you truly, truly understand what all of those 1,300 pages mean, you still could have a huge surprise when suddenly a multifamily something or whatever is being proposed near your neighborhood. Even if it's done well, the traffic impacts, the congestion, all of these other things you're not going to be happy about. So part of what I think, to get to what John's talking about, we need a public, of course, that's going to get educated, and that's a big struggle. But we also need a change of focus, because I don't know of any other industry than the construction or development industry that seems to be given perks. Another article recently was about the impact fees in Sarasota County, that while most of the surrounding counties, cities, whatever, are raising their impact fees because the recession is in the rearview mirror, and we keep reading, Pat Neal is having record months, record years, one after the other, selling more houses than he's ever sold, growth is burgeoning, development is burgeoning. So I'm wondering, what's the reason this industry gets the perk of a reduced impact fee? Did they give a perk to every other business in town? You know, if you have an ice cream shop, did you get some kind of deduction on your taxes or fees or something? I doubt it. And in the face of it's time to think about traffic, we're still going apparently to reduce or hold our impact fees below what they should be to actually pay for, or make a stab at paying for the impacts. And who is going to pay? Anybody know? We are. So I think these are big issues that we need elected officials who will not be beholden or pander to or in any way treat the development industry as something to be coddled or special or even to be encouraged at this point. As Charles says, they are going to come here. People are going to come. The big issue is, and you know, there's a big failure that's happened. It was pointed out to the county. The county said, oh, yeah, we kind of forgot about that, but we'll do something about it, but I don't think they have yet. Part of the 2050 plan policy, or 5.2 or whatever it is, requires the county to establish a joint planning thing with all the municipalities and meet to discuss. Well, that still, as far as I know, hasn't happened. And so we have Northport, Venice, Longboat dangling out there, and Sarasota, and there's still no integration of those entities, all to talk about how we want to move to the future. Because if the urban areas and the county would work together to really truly focus on development within the urban area, we have plenty of units, unbuilt units in the urban, this side of the urban service boundary, the whole bit. Instead of the scrape and pave out on the pastures, which they prefer, developers prefer, it's easier. Why not? You know, it's easier. But there's no obligation on government to make it easier for development to happen, given that the development takes away environmental lands, it takes away resources, and it takes away our agricultural capabilities, which, while everybody ignores it, agriculture and tourism are still the biggest industries in Florida. And Sarasota's culture and history has always been agriculture. And it's what my great-grandfather did. He ranched. He had cattle. That was his thing. He was known as the Cattle Baron of Florida, and it's his picture on one of those murals at the airport that's the little rustic pioneer thing. Dink Murphy, that was my great-grandfather. Anyway, I mean, we have to talk about this. And I believe that one of the big issues, I've got a couple minutes, that we need to bring back into all of our government, local, as well as the bunch up there and you know where, is integrity. And I think you'll be hearing more about that in the near future, that it's something. Well, let me ask a question. How many believe or think that having a sitting commissioner be the director, executive director of Argus, is a conflict of interest? I'm curious. Thank you. I'm going to sit down on that note.
Thank you, Bill. Some very interesting issues have raised. I said I was going to ask the first two questions as the moderator's prerogative. I'm really just going to ask one, since I see the people out here, and I know you got a lot better questions than I have in any event. As I was, and a lot of issues have come out. Coordination. What do you do with the cities? How do you coordinate that better? What sort of things should you focus on? How do you have the right types of housing for various and sundry economic groups that was also raised and others. But the idea was, well, they're going to come. And there's an old saying, of course, if you build it, they'll come. The obverse is if you don't build it, maybe they won't come, or at least not in the same numbers. There was an interesting article that I just happened to see this morning in the Herald Trib. It was written, it said in, it was a letter to the editor, not an article. A man named George Gitlitz, physician, MD. I don't know him, never heard his name before. But he says in it that the problem is that there are too many people in Sarasota and Manatee counties. Our combined populations have more than doubled since 1980, from 350,696 to 719,917 in 2012. Will it be 1.5 million in the next third of the century? Will the new people bring only bikes, smart cars? And then he goes on to say that until you tackle that problem, you are not apt to tackle the other problems. And I'm inclined to agree with you. Because people will come if there is a place, tourists will come. We want tourists to come. Everybody lives off tourists. We want a certain number of retirees to come because they're wealthy and they contribute generally to the community more than they take out of in use. But is it true? Can you not, and I'm asking the panel this now, can you not put enough growth restrictions in so that you can limit the number of people who come, who are inevitably going to drive cars, so that you can provide maybe subsidized transportation, maybe some subsidized housing for people that work in the so-called service industries and so on. And I'd like to just throw it out to any of you folks. Is it inevitable that the population is going to rise to that extent? Because you go on a little further, you go on 60 more years from now. I did the calculation this morning, I think it was 60, yeah. 60 more years from now. And you end up, if the population is increasing at the same rate, you're going to end up with 2,800,000 people in Sarasota and Manatee counties, if you take the two counties together. Anybody? Who first?
I want to say
okay, all right,
something.
first.
John, stand up a minute. When we were doing the multi-stakeholder group, John O did one of his quirky, brilliant things that stops everybody in his tracks. We were working on all sorts of maps of the county, and John O brought in 2 maps that were at the same scale of the maps we were working on. One was Bombay, one was Calcutta. Now it's Mumbai and Calcutta, but nonetheless, one had 13 million, one had 14 million. He said, I wonder how this would fit in Sarasota County. And he plopped the graphics on the map, and guess what? We had gobs of room left over after we put 27 million people in the county. Which of course was, well, and everybody, oh, no way. So John O's point was, if I may, well, if you don't want 27 million, how many do you want, and how are you going to plan for what you want? That question never gets answered.
Charles?
Hey, boy, let's see. Thanks to the article, I spent 45 minutes on the phone Thursday after that article about impact fees, because it missed so many points on what we're trying to do in regards to impact fees. It was misleading, and I told Josh that, and I asked him to go back and write a little bit about it. And so impact fees are important, and we are considering those. We're trying to figure out how to deal with them, because the article made it seem as if Sarasota County just says, we're not gonna do anything about it, and that's not the case, and I just want to address that. But, Bill asked a question, does the ice cream shop get benefits? The answer is yes. Go, look, what we're worried about right now, and everyone's angry about, is traffic. Okay, I drove from the island of Venice, from a Little League baseball game to here in 20 minutes, okay?
I don't know, you did it.
I did it, and I did not speed, all right, and I watched it to do it. Now, do I like, I'd rather be 15 minutes, but 2 years ago, 3 years ago, everything, the concern was jobs. How do we get people back to work? Okay, now if you're retired and you have a large investment income and you don't have to worry about that, God bless you, I hope I'm there one day. But for the state of Florida, it was how do we get people back to work? And so there were incentives given to companies. I don't know that an ice cream shop got one, but PGT and other companies that were doing things that were trying to grow and bring jobs here, quality jobs. Your commission did invest. We waived some sales tax. We did some different things in regards to property tax. We created at SCTI, we created a machinist type program there. So 2 years ago, when I came into office, we were still in a recession. Our property values had dropped 40%. Now, they've only come back 10, so we're still 30% lower than we were during 2006, 2007. So, and this is interesting. You said, how many people do you want here? How can you tell government to say, we only want Sarasota County to be 1 million people, period? How do you do that in the United States? You can't move here. If we get to 1 million and one person, someone's got to leave. Who in this room wants to leave? Okay, so state of Florida, no person, if you want to deal some ways to change this, if you really want to say, let's take the migration to some other place, okay? Florida has no personal income tax. Let's move to have a personal income tax. Florida doesn't have an estate tax. Okay, so people move here when they plan and say, well, I'm getting older, I want my children to get a little bit more of my estate. Let's get rid of that. We have homestead exemption. Let's get rid of that, all right? You had a governor that said, when he came in, like it or not, that's your own personal opinion, he has made it his goal to bring jobs here, okay? We're a right-to-work state, so maybe we should flip-flop and do New York, New Jersey, those type of states, and make it, where businesses have to choose where to go, so maybe they won't come here and bring their 200, 300, 400 workers. So there's a lot more to this than little Sarasota County placing moratoriums or building restrictions, because the reality is, let's not forget about California, okay? I disagree. Even if you don't build it, they're coming here. The weather's good, and all those things that I listed that are in our state constitution. They're gonna come here anyway, and what are they gonna do? They're gonna overpay for your house, and you're gonna say, great, I wanna go to North Carolina anyway, I'm out of here. But that house goes up, and everything that John's worried about, and he's absolutely right, we would be like California. What a house is $200,000 now will be $500,000 to buy in the future. And so, to me, not to get real political, this is just what we're dealing with all the time to try to figure this out, because they are coming here. I don't want to be like California, in that it's so expensive to live there, with all the taxes that they have. But what do we deal with when we are a place that people want to come to? And I know I'm going on. One other thing too is, I asked Wade to have this, because this is really good. I really want to show you something, do my great drawings here. Here's Sarasota County, okay? Here's the Gulf. All right, this is really, really what happened, okay? If this county, Sarasota, Venice, Northport, we get so restrictive on our rules by Sarasota County, what happened? Okay, this is fact.